Is this a sign of things to come? Donald Trump just sent a shockwave across the media landscape last week by announcing several new lawsuits against networks and pollsters, and it all sounds very familiar to Trump's former attorney Michael Cohen, but I don't think anyone has been able to put him back in his place better than how Scott Jennings did it on CNN panel. So take a look for yourself before we dive in.
The strategy is I, Donald Trump, have enough money to just take this thing to court, whether I win or lose. It's disruptive to the journalists. It's disruptive to the news organization. It costs them a ton of money. And he's right about that.
Abby, it's more than just that. Not only does Donald Trump have money, he has money with the RNC. He has money with his super PACs, and his money has money. Look at all of the tech billionaires that are around him now. There is an indefinite amount of money. And I believe wholeheartedly that the Des Moines Register, very much like ABC Disney, is going to capitulate. And I believe that Donald Trump has actually figured out a way how to change the way that media deals with issues, whether it's...
Are you worried at all about this, Scott, just where it could go? Not just the Donald Trump of it all, but I mean, if he's creating precedent, it's for everybody.
Well, when you introduced, Michael used the word narratives, and I think one of the reasons Republicans are cheering on this muscular attitude from Trump and pushing back against some of this is because Republicans feel like constantly media organizations, especially in the throes of campaigns, work overtime to create false narratives that may shape the contours of the election. Look what happened. When this poll came out in Iowa, the entire English-speaking world was talking about the gold standard pollster, and Harris has this momentum, and ultimately what we were told was complete garbage. And if you talked to pollsters at the time, they would have told you, this is not real, this methodology is not good anymore. But that's not what people chose to run with because it fit what most people in the press wanted the narrative to be. So he's pushing back on that. I don't, frankly, have a problem with it. And if they capitulate, it's because they don't want to go through the discovery and what that might show.
That last sentence from Scott Jennings is a lot more important than you think. If you understand the finer details of ABC's $15 million payout to Donald Trump, you'll know that it is a legal settlement and not a result of a trial or legal conclusion. And the only reason that a network as big as ABC News or its parent company Disney would want it to nip this legal trouble in the bud is because a court trial would throw a lot more dirty laundry on the table. And by the way, we show you the real story behind the media spin, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to join the conversation. Now, in a similar fashion, the Des Moines Register, as well as pollster Ann Selzer, are stuck between a rock and a hard place, as Donald Trump has brought out the big guns against all entities that he believes waged an information war against him in the years prior. In particular, if you remember the massive media wave we saw just 2 days from the election, with the Iowa poll that put Kamala Harris at a solid 3-point lead, Donald Trump believes it was a deliberate attempt at interfering with the election through manipulation of the polls and facts.
You're a practitioner, Scott. I mean, it's a bad poll. A bad poll is a bad poll.
It's worse than a bad poll.
The Trump campaign pollster Tony Fabrizio at the time called it an outlier. That's a thing in the polling business. It was an outlier. And if you remember correctly, Donald Trump won the last election. So narrative be damned, he won.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I'm always skeptical of polls regardless. Like, you and I would talk every day about the election, and we do rely on polls as indicators, but not determinators of what is going to happen in an election. I think that poll was allowed to be run, and whether you believed it or not, you have your own free will and volition to decide. I don't think anyone, it would have been, I think, negligent to not talk about it. And then it would have ended up being the case that maybe the poll was closer to reality. I just think that, like, to say that someone put out a poll that didn't say, because I'm putting this out, now you have to vote, it was a data point. And to be sued over it.
But that's the whole point. That's the rationale that a pollster has, because they usually happen with very little third-party oversight and yet have become influential because of how easy it is to reference and cite them before an election. That's what Donald Trump alleges against pollster Ann Selzer, writing on Truth Social, quote, "A totally fake poll that caused great distrust and uncertainty at a very critical time. She knew exactly what she was doing. Thank you to the great people of Iowa for giving me such a record-breaking vote. despite possible election fraud by Ann Selzer and the now discredited newspaper for which she works. An investigation is fully called for. And right now, even though Donald Trump has very little reason to go after this pollster or the magazine, perhaps he's starting off his presidency by sending a very clear message to the media establishment that he'll be a lot more litigious than last time.
The people in Iowa, their newspaper, which had a very, very good pollster who got me right all the time, and then just before the election, she said I was going to lose by 3 or 4 points, and it became the biggest story all over the world because I was going to win Iowa by 20 points. The farmers loved me, and I loved the farmers. And it was interesting the way she did it. She brought it down 2 weeks before. She said I was going to only win by 4. That was a big story. But that was good because she brought it down from like 22 points to 4 or whatever the number was, way up. Way up, an easy win. Never even thought to go there. I respect them, I love them, and they understand there's no reason to go there because she brought it from way up, walk away, which it was, and it turned out to be in the election too, by the way. It was a win by many, many points. And then she brought it down very smartly to 4 a couple of weeks before, and everyone said, wow, that's amazing. He's only up by 4 points. Then she brought it down to where I was down by 3 or 4, whatever number she used. And that was the Des Moines Register, and it was their parent. And in my opinion, it was fraud, and it was election interference. You know, she's gotten me right always. She's a very good pollster. She knows what she was doing. And she then quit before. And we'll probably be filing a major lawsuit against them today or tomorrow.
And if you read the actual text of the lawsuit now filed, you realize that Donald Trump's legal team is using neat legal tricks to tie a pollster to an allegation of election interference, and here's how they're doing it. In a paragraph from the lawsuit filed, it reads in part, and I quote, "As Selzer knows, these types of manipulations create a narrative of inevitability for Democrat candidates, increasing enthusiasm among Democrats, compelling Republicans to divert campaign time and money to areas in which they are ahead, and deceives the public into believing that Democrat candidates are performing better than they really are." And in other words, when polls come out so disastrously wrong close to an election, Trump seems to see ill will at hyping up the Democrat base to vote for Kamala Harris while distracting the Trump team's attention and campaign finances. Now, of course, we don't know how this particular lawsuit will end up, but there is something to be gleaned here. It's that Donald Trump is now trying to fight a war of attrition against the media. With all the resources, money, lawyers, and political power at his disposal, there's basically no pollster or media network that can afford to get into a protracted and expensive legal battle against him, and that's a fear that has settled in far and wide, even on places like CBS and 60 Minutes, which many accuse of editing Kamala Harris's answer on the Middle Eastern war to try and make her sound more coherent than she really is. Trump, on his part, has at least been consistent in his disdain for these media networks and pollsters, even alluding on Joe Rogan's podcast that these expensive polls with small sample sizes are basically just meant to be fodder for the media.
Like, the whole poll thing is very bizarre for most people because most people don't answer polls. So they read the polls, then
Were
like,
you
who's
ever called
getting polled? I've
from
never
a
been
poll?
polled.
I was
if I
never
did, I'd
called-
hang up.
I was never called by a pollster.
If I did, I wouldn't answer. I'm busy.
You know how polls are done? I'm going to get myself
Please.
in trouble. But so I really don't believe too much in them. So
Well, 2016 taught a lot of people about the ineffective
well, they were very
use of polls.
ineffective because
Yeah.
I thought I was doing well. I'd go to a place and I'd have 30, 40,000 people. Hillary would go, they have 500 people, and they tell me I'm going to lose. I said, why am I going to lose? I had 40,000 people. She had 200 people. But, you know, I have a theory. These pollsters, they charge you a lot of money, too. You know, they charge you $500,000 to do some stupid poll, and they interview like 251 people. I don't think they interview them in many cases. I don't want to get myself in too much
You
trouble.
think it's
No, I think they sit there, they make a deal, they get $500,000, and they say, Trump's leading 51-49. They announce it, and everybody says, "Oh." Do you understand? I
Yeah.
really don't.
So you think
I don't
it's
think they. I think in a lot. Look, I'm a very common sense person. I think that they probably don't always poll. Some of them probably never poll.
I'm sure there will be a lot of people who dispute that, but polling data this past year has made people more skeptical of the entire enterprise. First, with Joe Biden's chances at victory if he stayed in, and then Kamala Harris somehow trailing past Trump in the final stretch of the campaign, popular pollsters may go to the same way as the legacy media when it comes to relevance and trust. But let me know in the comments how you process all of this, because we're probably going to see more legal troubles mounting for some of the biggest names in the mainstream media.